Dr. Perrone, in my medical practice, I'm a doc too. My medical practice, I worked with in a hospital for the uninsured and the poorly insured, which is a euphemism for Medicaid. And I'm recognizing that Medicaid, although coverage, oftentimes pays so little that, frankly, people don't take it. So, knowing that Medicaid is financing a lot of these treatment programs, but as a poor payer, your business model somehow has to accommodate for that. It might be a community health center, et cetera. If you look across our 51 jurisdictions, what is the kind of uptake? Relate to me on some sort of a graph. If this is Medicaid and this is the number of treatment programs relative to population, how good is Medicaid doing in terms of encouraging people to provide these programs?
Thank you for that question. You know, we work in a model where we're primarily, all of our patients are Medicaid or no insurance, so we rapidly get them on Medicaid. And fortunately, in Pennsylvania, we do have pretty rapid access to Medicaid. Whether or not that reimbursement is sufficient, it certainly is not. You know, I work in an academic medical center where, you know, the mission pays for...
So you have less, you have some sort of subsidy for good human work.
Yes.
Now, that said, though, my question is not on the particular, but rather on the statistical. If I were to look at, you know, the average among states on a per capita basis, relative, and the capita is the number of people who need treatment, how much is, and knowing that many of these are Medicaid patients, how well is Medicaid doing in terms of financing this care?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. I can say Medicaid is the largest purchaser of addiction services in the country, but I don't know what the gap is in, you know, in terms of people who aren't getting appropriate addiction care.
Can you just speak in general then about what is the, okay, let me just kind of drop that. Mr. Vincina, again, in my medical practice, I used to treat patients from jails. I used to go into prisons, so I'm aware of all this. I am aware that somebody who is currently booked into jail loses Medicaid benefits before being adjudicated. And so they may be said not guilty, but they've still lost their Medicaid, and they have to go through the whole rigmarole to get back onto Medicaid. Now, something that we're working on in this committee, Senator Wyden and I, two bills. One, the due process, which would allow 7 days of coverage or 14 days, depending on the version, of somebody with substance abuse to continue on Medicaid once put into a jail, and then reentry, which would allow the enrollment into Medicaid 30 days prior to discharge from a prison. Any comments from your kind of like living the experience, how this might help somebody either initiate and continue therapy once on the outside, they aid in that transition, or else never lose Medicaid and so they never lose the coverage that they would like to have?
Yeah, thank you so much. In the most general of terms, I would say, you know, jail serves as a rehabilitation place, right?
It serves as a rehabilitation?
Right, and so we would want the services in the jail, however we pay for them, that would give people rehabilitative services. And knowing that the majority of people in jail have a substance use issue, and a lot of times that drove their other criminal behavior, we would want to address that first and foremost. And so in the county jail systems, you know, a person loses Medicaid and then the jail has to pay for the services. And I'm not an expert on the criminal justice budget, but I feel like they don't have the money to pay for adequate services. And so leveraging Medicaid match for those behavioral health services would be ideal from a cost savings perspective. And then in prisons, I've been working with some guys in prison, and from what I understand, adults in custody aren't eligible for treatment until 6 months post before they leave. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you think you would want to treat them and get them support right when they got there so that they could begin.
Now, hang on. But if somebody is in a prison, therefore they are at least incarcerated for a year or more,
right?
Theoretically, although we know there's lots of contraband, they would not have access. Granted, as Dr. Perrone says, that doesn't mean that they won't go back, but in prison they'll have less opportunity to go back.
Yeah, you would think that, but it's just not the case. And so what I would say is that we'd want them to have access to treatment.
Do you know if we have data on the degree of fentanyl overdose within prisons?
I'm not able to answer that question today, but I will say that it has been a problem in Multnomah County that I'm aware of, to the point where there's a passing of the torch of who's going to help people who are addicted. And so jails may be less hesitant to take people if they have a risk of overdose.
I'm out of time. Dr. Aron, I had a question for you, but instead I have kind of a critique. One of my favorite employees is sitting right behind you. You stole him from me. I'll forgive you for that, only because I wanted him to have great opportunity. But again, thank you for your good work. Amanda, great to see you, man. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy.